Edward Djerejian, welcome to WPC TV. You are now director of the James Baker Institute at Rice University, but I think you're best known as former US ambassador, not just to Damascus, but also to Tel Aviv. So, obvious question. What do you think is happening in the Middle East? What do you think will happen? A bit of a broad brush question, but fill it in.
John, that is a huge question. Well, I think the most important development in the Middle East is the Arab awakening, which in my view represents a tectonic shift in the whole political landscape of the Middle East, and not only the Arab world, but largely in the Muslim world. And I think that is changing the geopolitical equation in many different ways. The rise of these popular protests, these revolutions that had no defined leadership or political organization, either secular or religious, behind it, is an incredible event. And it represents in my eyes, the true end of the whole post-colonial period, where nation states in the Arab world became independent after World War II. You had one dictatorship after another, and with the systemic corruption, lack of political participation, these regimes truly not addressing the educational, the economic, and the major societal issues in their countries, the people had enough. And I think the most telling sign that I saw in all the YouTubes in Tunisia, where it started, was this one sign in Arabic, kifaya, enough. And the people were saying, enough of a lack of political participation, enough of no jobs, enough of no social security. We want a change. And that is what is happening. Now, the other aspect, which is very important, is that Islamic parties are coming into power in various countries. And so now this should not be a surprise when you open up the political process in Muslim countries that political parties will come to power. And I think people are losing their focus on this. That's not the issue. The issue is, when in power, how are they going to govern? Yes. That is the key issue. And we're seeing that manifested today in Egypt, the most important Arab country alongside of Saudi Arabia, but with President Morsi having decreed through executive authority the Constituent Assembly, the constitutional amendments, and now having to backtrack on that, you see the tensions at play. So the issue that we should focus on is, how are these Islamist parties going to govern in power? Are they going to use the democratic process only to come to power and then become dictatorial? That would be a tragedy. Are they going to be inclusive of the various other parties and ethnicities and religious groups in a country, for example, Egypt and the Copts? That is another fundamental issue. So it's really a question of governance by these parties. And one Arab friend told me, in terms of these political Islamic parties, that you cannot govern by insha'Allah alone. Yes. You cannot just say, if God wills, if God wills. No, these Islamist political leaders have to address the same issues of jobs, education, social security, etc., that the secular leaders had to do. So this is going to be the touchstone.
Let's hope for the best, but just a couple of final questions. Number one, Syria. A dreadful situation at the moment. How do you see it resolving? I remember that last year at the World Policy Conference, Prince Turki al-Faisal and Ehud Barak both said that Bashar al-Assad will fall within weeks. Well, he's still there.
I'm glad I did not make that prediction. But I think his father, with whom I dealt when I was ambassador to Syria, Hafez al-Assad, put into place an incredibly powerful political, military security regime. And it has proven to be quite resilient, despite the fact that more pieces of territory in Syria are going into rebel hands. The regime lingers on. It's holding on tenaciously. And one cannot put a deadline on it, but we are definitely in a post-Assad era
Yes.
in Syria. But when and how it's going to happen, I would not dare a prediction. But it's coming close because the battles having been brought to Aleppo and Damascus is a critical new factor.
The final question, the perennial question, the Palestinians and the Israelis. Is there ever going to be a solution? And if there is that solution going to be two states or one state?
Well, those are the alternatives, and I am a fervent advocate of the two-state solution for the following reasons. First of all, if Israel, as it defines itself as a democratic Jewish state, wants to be so, there must be a two-state solution. Because once an agreement is reached with the Palestinians, Israel can then preserve its democratic and Jewish identity. I do not think that Israel can preserve its democratic Jewish identity in a one-state solution for the following reasons. It would be a continuous occupier. Secondly, the geopolitics of demography. The Palestinian Arab population is simply multiplying at a much higher rate than the Jewish population. And over the years, the Jewish population will become more and more and more a minority in this one-state solution. So I think any Israeli prime minister should have this as his or her first urgent priority, to get a two-state solution sooner rather than later. And the two other factors, John, are very important in this is technology, military technology. You can build all the iron domes, and they're quite successful. But as I used...
Iron domes being the anti-missile...
Anti-missiles.
batteries.
But with the advancement of technology and weapons of mass destruction, it is just too much of a gamble to live in a constant state of non-peace with your neighbors. And the other factor is ideology. As long as the Palestinian issue is not resolved, it will be used and exploited by extremists for their own ends. So again, I think primary task of an Israeli prime minister is to get to the two-state solution, and hopefully he or she will have a partner in the Palestinian Authority or a PLO that also includes Hamas.
Inshallah, we'll get to that point. Edward
Inshallah.
Djerejian, thank you very much indeed.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.